What's going on, guys? This is Jared with Almatum Audible, joined with my co-host Adrian Bermudez. Adrian, both of us, I think, are in the same boat, just struggling to stay cool throughout this Texas heat wave. I think we're recording it today, July 13th. I think we're through the worst of it. It's not like 105 degrees anymore, but man, it's been rough. It's been real rough. I hope you're holding better than I am.
Oh, buddy, I don't know about the worst of it. I think we're just getting started with this heat wave. Maybe the worst of it for now. But I mean, dude, it's only July. August and September are the hottest months, at least in Houston. And so, yeah, it's gonna get hotter, bro. It's gonna get hotter. Damn.
It's not what I wanted to hear. But hey, I don't want to be one of those podcasts that starts off talking about the weather for 10, 20 minutes. I stopped listening to a couple podcasts because I got sick of them talking about the weather every time they start the podcast. But this is extraordinary circumstances.
It is. Everybody make sure you're staying hydrated and staying cool out there in the Texas heat, man, because it's no joke right now.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think this is episode 182 of the podcast. We're going to hit 200 episodes this football season. We're actually going to hit our anniversary on Saturday. I don't know if you knew this. What's a year 8, year 7 of Almatum Audible?
I didn't know we had a definitive day for.
I made one up.
Okay.
I think I went off of the recording date of episode 1.
Well, I wouldn't say that's made up at all. I'd say it's a pretty legitimate anniversary date.
Well, it was agreed upon. It was not agreed upon by the Almatum Audible team. This was just me enforcing it.
Okay.
Yeah, July 16th, 2015.
Wow. 8 years. That's incredible.
Yeah. And you want to know how I referenced that date was I went to almatumaudible.com, the new home of Almatum Audible. I clicked on the About link in the footer to verify our own history. And just a great segue, because I didn't want to talk about the podcast. This is our first episode that we've done since we launched the brand new Almatum Audible headquarters, if you will. And just want to thank everybody for checking it out. The response has been phenomenal. I think the site was only live for 2 weeks in June, and it was our best month for page views in a non-football month by like 4x. Right. So
real.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't wait to see what it looks like in football season. I'm super stoked. It's been awesome just being able to like make a good article on my phone while, I'm just sitting around at the grocery store waiting on something or whatever. So it's been great. And I want to thank also everyone who signed up for their user accounts, because I was kind of worried that, people wouldn't, transition over from Patreon to the new site. We've had pretty good success there. And if you haven't checked it out, be sure to do so. I think we're all pretty happy with it.
Yeah, big time. almatumaudible.com, your home for all things podcast, right? All blogs, all episodes, all content, videos. If you need to find us on social, just go there. It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah, and a quick teaser, if you're a Patreon subscriber, I actually have a Patreon exclusive article that I posted.
Yes.
It's a class recap of the class of 2010 for UTSA.
Unbelievable. Unreal. 3,000 word essay on it, in fact.
Yeah. So every player that signed with UTSA in the 2010 class, as well as some of the key walk-ons for the practice season, are all listed there. I talk about all those guys at least a little bit, some quite a bit. And it was really a trip down memory lane for me. Some of the stuff I found on Google as I was Googling these players was pretty crazy. People always ask for like where are they now? And sometimes I feel like maybe it's an invasion of privacy. I don't know. But there was some pretty cool stuff out there that I found for these long ago alumni of UTSA. So it was a cool read. I hope you guys will check it out if you're a Patreon subscriber.
An incredible write-up. Might even be worthy of giving some discussion to on a Patreon exclusive episode.
That's a good point. Yeah, we're already putting topics together for our Patreon exclusive. We'll have to add that to the list.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But we got a good slate today.
We do. Yeah. We got a great interview lined up. After we get through a couple more topics, we have Dr. Hunter Taylor on. He's the author of Draw the Line, which was an amazing book that just released, I think, 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. I had a pre-order copy, came in a little bit early, so I got a head start on the book. Talks about Jeff Traylor and his rise to the coaching ranks, kind of his formative years, moving into Gilmer High School, taking the reins there, becoming a Texas high school football coaching legend. And then, of course, the last chapter of the book is his journey to UTSA. So we talked with Dr. Taylor quite a bit about the writing process for that book, some of his inspirations, his relationship with Jeff and all these other, high school football legends that are in the book. And it was a great discussion. Had a lot of fun talking to Hunter, and hopefully we'll get to meet him soon at some point in the near future.
Incredible, man. Really, really incredible. And it's that East Texas passion is something that is consistent amongst every single person that I have interacted with from that region. It's amazing. It really is. Yeah,
it definitely is. But not the only high profile publication released this past couple of weeks that had some UTSA on the front cover. Okay, that segue was a little bit weak. I could have done better on that one, but we'll roll with it. Dave Campbell, Texas Football Magazine, released June, July. Coach Trailer on the cover. It's a cool site, man. That's when you made it in the state, when your face is on the cover of the magazine.
It's big time, real big time. And along with him being featured on the cover, you've got several Roadrunners get placed on Dave Campbell's All Texas Football preseason team. So we'll be going through some of those selections as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, not only was Coach Trailer featured not only on the cover, but also in the main story, written by UTSA alumnus and friend of the pod, frequent guest appearance, Mike Craven. Shout out to Mike. But they the whole staff at Dave Campbell's obviously super high on UTSA. I believe every single person that picked the Conference USA Championship game picked UTSA, which I feel like is a curse probably. I feel like they had no chance of winning it. And I think Dave Campbell's picked UTSA to win 9 games or something like that, which I guess for fan expectations that I'm seeing on Twitter might be a little low, but for me, that's high. So I was pretty happy with that.
That's really high. Yeah. Holy cow. That's pretty impressive coming from the source. I like that. Yep. So yes, indeed. Should we give some shout outs before we jump in?
Yeah, let's do it. So we did have a new subscriber since our last podcast. Shout out to Robert Mujica, who joined us at the Insider tier. And shout out, as always, to our big money donors, Ben Tovar, Rick Cortez of the Reality Road Grillers, Zach Espericueta, the San Antonio Podcast Network, and our Board of Trustees members, Digitique, John Otwell, Lino Perez of Los Dos Rowdies Tailgating, and Gary and Ruben, representing the UTSA Burger King Tailgate. And since I was talking about the website recently, all of those big money donors and board trustees have their tailgates and their websites and their Facebook pages and all that linked on the front page of our website. So if you want to check out their tailgates or their businesses or their podcast, you can be sure to do so there. And
nice.
If you want to be featured on the website, you sign up for Patreon and we got you.
Very nice. Very nice. So you're telling me that if I'm at the proper Patreon tier, I can get plugged not only on the Alamo Dome Audible podcast, every single show episode, but also on the webpage, Jared?
Yeah, and you sold that really well with your face on the video. Hopefully we can get the video on YouTube. That was very convincing. If I was a small business owner in the greater San Antonio community, I would certainly pay Alamo Audible $25 a month, after that thrilling sales pitch you just had. So thank you for that.
Incredible. Yeah. Twitter ads. So yes, where do we begin? I guess with this, the Dave Campbell release here for the all preseason team.
Yeah, I guess you just want to list them out and kind of give our thoughts on.
Yeah, I like this. I like this a lot because this is for all the fans who just might not really be aware of just how much talent returns to the field for the Roadrunners in 2022. But it's tremendous. And we had 6 players selected to the all preseason team for Dave Campbell. That's the third most of any college football program in Texas, only behind A&M with 8 and U of H, who is our game 1 opponent, with 7. And really, really cool. We've got Zachary Franklin and Rashad Wisdom, both on the first team. And then we've got Josh Cephas, Lucas Dean, Trevor Harmison, and Ahufitu Maka all on the second team. Stacked. Absolutely stacked. And it's literally across every single phase of the game, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say next. Just, I mean, I remember back in the day, it was like if UTSA got a specialist on that list, it felt like a big deal, you know, to get the punter on there, the kicker on there.
That was
massive,
huge,
right?
Yeah.
Because like these are all the Power 5 schools that you're competing against, whether 5 or 6 Power 5 schools in Texas, and you know, to have your guy on the list, even if it's a punter or kicker, felt pretty special. And now it's easy to take it for granted, you know, how much talent there is on here. And,
right.
You know, I've been doing a lot of season preview guest appearances on other podcasts, and they're always like, oh, well, UTSA had a bunch of seniors, so they must have lost a lot of talent, right? And it's like, probably less than you would expect.
Yeah, not exactly that. And I think that's what people need to wrap their heads around, is that this isn't just talking about Conference USA or G5 in the Texas landscape. No, this is, like you said, across every single university, and that includes the P5. And so to have this many names pop up on that list is highly respectable, coming from the Bible of Texas football, right? And so it goes to show you that the expectations remain to be high on this team, and they're expected to come out here and defend their title, man.
Yeah, and there's plenty of guys that were probably right on the bubble. Like there are probably several guys on this roster that would have made the third team. You know, I think Corey Mayfield, Jamal Ligon, Mekhi Hart, you know, guys like that. They were probably real close to getting selected too. So it's hard to complain about Stubbs when you're third, you know, in the number of selections, right? And I think this list was spot on for UTSA. Those are definitely
no, but that's players. A really, really good point, man, because we may have been third in overall number of players listed, but hell, when it comes to nominees for being on the all preseason, UTSA may have been first, dude.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it's incredible. So yeah, that's a very sexy look here for UTSA. Mm-hmm. And alongside that, we were talking about the birdsup.com UTSA rivals OGs having that really cool podcast kind of centered, well, half of the podcast centered around Jeff Traylor and UTSA on the Dave Campbell Texas Football Podcast. And so Mike Craven and Javi
Republic of Texas, if people are searching for it on Spotify.
There you go.
One of my favorite podcasts I listen to pretty much weekly, I'd say.
And then they hit on so many really cool talking points about what UTSA needs to prepare for, to deal with this year. And I really like to just kind of explore a couple of those with you.
Yeah.
Well, this one isn't about this year. It's actually a something that Craven brought up from last season, an anecdote. Yeah. And so this was one of the coolest things I'd heard on that podcast. So Craven did this really cool feature on Jeff Traylor about halfway through last season. Everyone probably remembers that. And he went to El Paso for the monumental showdown that was two undefeated UT system schools, UTSA versus UTEP, in the Sun Bowl for UTSA football's perhaps last time in the Sun Bowl ever, right? And certainly as conference opponents. And Craven talks about going from the UTSA locker room to the UTEP locker room, or the players getting off the bus, something like that, right? But having this very, very up close and personal view of one team's players and then the next team players shortly thereafter, right? And there was a significant size difference that he noticed, a noticeable difference between the size of UTSA's guys and UTEP's guys. And that was a truly, truly eye-opening moment for him, especially remembering, right, where the program started in 2011 with guys who were, probably JUCO sized playing at UTSA. And now you've got this real a P5 stature of an athlete now coming to the school. It's amazing to hear that, right? We were that much larger, stronger, more powerful from our direct division rival on the same night.
Yeah, and that should be even more pronounced this upcoming season too. I mean, UTSA's only continued to recruit at a higher level since then. I mean, one of the things I love about the summer is it's that small window of period where like it's normal for straight men to send pictures of shirtless guys to each other and be like, dude, check out the work this guy's putting in the weight room. He's going to be a beast this season.
Sweet rig on that dude. Yeah. He's looking cut. He's looking huge. He's looking, I love
Exactly. And definitely just the level of athleticism. Yeah, I mean, look, call me out if you disagree, but it's in my friend group, it's accepted to send those weight room shots. Anyways, the level of athleticism in this program is just continuing to rise, right? And that's a big reason why, even if things don't go well for UTSA, you still have to be pretty bullish on them competing really strongly in Conference USA this year, just from the sheer level of athleticism, size, speed, length, weight, all that stuff, right? It's just UTSA has come so far. And I think there's going to be a lot of games where you look at the guys that are lined up across the field from UTSA and it almost looks like they're in a different division, right? I think this is starting to become like a Power 6 roster, if you will, for UTSA, where like they have a lot of recruits that are at that higher G5 level, where there was that difference between a 0.87, a 0.88 player on a 24/7 composite rating compared to, a 0.80, right? They're both 3 stars, but there's a big difference in size, speed, and all of that, right? And I like Mike's anecdote there because that's kind of like your first real glimpse at it of these two teams that are both having great seasons. They have high expectations, but you put them on the field together, and one team's clearly the more talented roster.
You can see it, visually see it, and then it plays out over the following 4 quarters right after, right? Yep. Right after you make that observation, and it ties right back to the all preseason selections. All the talent's there. Everything's there to propel UTSA through Conference USA once again this season. It's going to more so what happens on the intangible side of things. And this is another really cool point that they were talking about, Javi and Craven. The adversity, the potential adversity that UTSA is going to have to deal with how freaking hard this out-of-conference schedule is. And last year, you've got a 0 in the loss column through the first 10 games of the season, 11 games of the season. And I guess it was 10, right? Yeah. And everyone loves you. Everyone's enamored with you. You are the favorite child. You're the hero. You can do no wrong. Everyone is celebrating and parading UTSA every single week. It's on the billboards. It's on the news, on the local news segments. It's on the social media pages. It's everywhere, man. The tables turn so freaking quickly when you're not winning and when you're losing. And a team coming out 0-2, 0-3, especially with some big losses, let UT or Army come out or Houston come out and really run up the score on us. I mean, watch. People start to jump off the bandwagon. Watch the mean, nasty tweets with the ats and players getting mentioned with some heinous commentary behind it. It's going to happen. Yep. You better believe it'll happen. And people's hopes are going to fall out the window. What is that going to do to the locker room? How is that going to affect their mentality before the season has actually even really begun to already be going through sort of this mental struggle? Because they haven't won a game yet, right? And it's very well a reality that could happen. And does that if that happens, they start 0-3 or 1-2, does that then roll over into conference play? A bad mind state, a bad mind frame, poor play.
Yeah, you see this at all levels of sports and in every sport, in every type of competitive situation, right? But whenever you've had success, and especially if you're a G5 program that's quote unquote like surpassed expectations or unearned success, whatever people want to say, people are so quick and are just waiting for the moment that they can dance on your grave, right? They want to see you fail. And right now they'll be happy for you and they'll be proud, like, yeah, maybe go Roadrunners. But if a team comes to the Alamo and, beats you by 20 points, the Twitter timeline is going to have the word overrated in it a lot. And UTSA is going to get memed on. People are going to say that Jeff Traylor was overrated, that Texas Tech got lucky, that they didn't get him. It's going to get nasty, right? And, hopefully we don't have to worry about it. UTSA has another miracle, amazing season, and they beat everyone on the schedule. But it's going to be a much harder route this year, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point. The resiliency of the team is going to be tested, just like it was when they had that embarrassing loss to North Texas. They bounced right back, took care of business, all good. But we got to see that mental toughness continue to carry through. But this time in the early season as opposed to the late season.
Yeah. And, you have people jumping off the bandwagon like that. And you've got that, you got more in the loss column than you do the win column. You remember 41,000 people at the Alamo Dome just in December, a few months ago, right? And then next thing you know, WKU could be coming to town for the first home CUSA game, and back down in the 20s, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden, there's not as invested of a home crowd, of a home stadium. The players are like, man, what the hell happened? This place is just packed, right? Yep. U of H, it'll be a packed house, right? Mm-hmm. And then, right, and so what's going to, and it'll be really, really interesting to see if that's going to be a tumultuous sort of ride for the mind state of these players. But from how we've seen Jeff Traylor handle outside noise, I think this team will be okay. Mm-hmm. But this is potentially going to be one of the largest tests.
I'm more worried about the fans themselves.
Ooh.
Like their psyche.
Yeah,
let's explore that as we get closer to our season preview podcast. But that's where my mind's at right now.
My gosh.
I had a guest appearance on the Roost podcast last night. It's not published yet, but I talked about it a bit on that podcast. You guys can look forward to that. We'll post the link on the website.
The feeble UTSA fan is that area of concern. I could definitely see that being an area of concern.
There's going to be some learning moments for a lot of new members of the fan base, right?
Mm-hmm.
Straight up. Period.
This isn't how it goes. This isn't how it happens every year, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it might not be this year. It might be next year. It might be 3 years from now. But you're going to have failures, right? And I think we were really spoiled last year. And I think a lot of the fan bases knew, and they only know success, right? So we'll see how it goes.
We've been talking a lot about all of this great returning talent and all of this awesome seniority that's going to be on the field next season. Well, one thing that Javi and Craven were talking about was some of the talent that is not going to be on the field for UTSA in 2022. Specifically, Sincere McCormick and Clarence Hicks, who you could argue are two of the most important figures on either side of the ball. But they made the point that Clarence Hicks is a bigger loss to the UTSA football team than Sincere McCormick. Personally, after last season, for just talking about 2021 season, I got to say I agree.
Yeah.
Do you agree or disagree?
I heavily agree for two reasons. And let me just first say right off the bat, this is no slight on Sincere. I mean, he played a massive part in UTSA success through the Jeff Traylor era. I mean, he's a legend. He's on my UTSA Mount Rushmore. But I sound like Stephen A. Smith. But two things. First off, the depth that was left behind at pass rushing specialist, outside linebacker, edge player after the season is not great, right? Mm-hmm. I'm optimistic about some guys. I think Caleb Lewis is going to be a really good 4-year player for UTSA. I think Owen Peewee is going to step in and contribute as a true freshman.
Oh, yeah.
I think Jamori Robinson's got as high of a ceiling as any player on the defense. But none of those guys are proven at the collegiate level. And Clarence Hicks is an NFL level player. So by that aspect of alone, I think it's going to be a bigger loss because you don't have Vernon Brady, Traylon Smith, Ty Edwards ready to step in and go right away. But also on the other side of the coin, the other big factor, which is probably more than just any individual player, is that good running backs come around pretty often in college football, right? Even bad teams tend to have pretty good running backs, at least one on the roster that can get 5 yards of carry. Yeah. But guys that can pull down 15 sacks a year don't come around often at all, right? And I think that just like the rarity of that level of athlete, that production, is a lot more common than a guy who's given you a good 4.5 yards per carry over a 12-game season. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time. And if we're just talking about, output wise for 2021. I mean, look, Clarence Hicks was so instrumental in every single game played week in and week out in making sure that UTSA's defense kept whoever we were playing from scoring points. I mean, he was all over the freaking field and just a ball hawk. Mm-hmm. And, I think you could definitively say that Clarence Hicks was the most important player on UTSA's defense in 2021. When we're talking about the offense, the most important player on UTSA's offense in 2021 was not Sincere McCormick. It was Frank Harris. Mm-hmm. In 2020 was Sincere McCormick. Mm-hmm. But in 2021, it was Frank Harris. And that's something that a lot of people get wrong or just overlook. And maybe because 2020 Sincere was that guy, so they just default to Sincere being that guy. But Frank Harris was the best player on UTSA's offense last year. And he was the reason why we won a lot of games. And I can't remember who I'm sorry. It was on Twitter with WKU. What's my guy? Jack
Fletcher?
Yeah. No. Yeah, Fletcher Keel. Yeah. And we were Fletcher said, Stephen Cormick's not going to be here to save you against WKU. So I was like, buddy, Frank is the one who had 7 touchdowns in one single game against you guys, not Sincere. That's who you got to be worried about. But
and who does Western Kentucky bring back? Their whole roster and the coaching staff.
Right, Come on, Fletch. But I was like, Fletch, we didn't lose our best guy. We lost our second best guy. Frank Harris is still here, my man. And I think but that is the perception. Fletch's perception right there. Mm-hmm. That's sort of the general consensus that Sincere was the man for that offense. And that was only the case in 2020, but it wasn't the case when we won the CUSA championship. So now, albeit in that game, he did have 200 plus yards, and he was the reason why we won that championship game probably. But no, man, throughout the season, it was Frank Harris's offense. So got to give him the nod there. And so, Clarence Hicks, man, I'll agree. I'll agree on that one. Yeah.
All right, Adrian, let's set the folks for the Cumbia break. Give them, it's been a while since we had a Cumbia break.
Oh,
it's been slow really in the summer. Time. We didn't do one last podcast, so I hope people will enjoy it. And then we'll flip over to our interview with Dr. Hunter Taylor talking about Draw the Line, Jeff Traylor, Gilmer, Texas, all that great stuff.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for subscribing on Patreon. And like I said earlier, there's some great bonus content on there. So be sure to check it out, sign up for an account. And we'll see you guys with another Patreon episode probably coming next week sometime.
Next week for sure. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you guys. And we'll see you after the jump. All right, guys, welcome. We've got a special guest on the podcast with us this week. As we mentioned on the intro, we've got Dr. Hunter Taylor with us. He is the author of the recently released Draw the Line, which if you haven't read my book review on the blog, be sure to do so. I really enjoyed it. If you enjoy high school Texas football, if you're a fan of Jeff Traylor, which obviously anyone listening to this likely is, or if you just love to read about football in general and have a passion for coaching, leadership, all that great stuff, there's really something for everyone in this book. So Hunter, thanks so much for joining us today. I know your schedule is quite busy this summer, so we really appreciate your time.
No, thanks a bunch. It meant a lot that you asked. And I still really appreciate the book review you did. That meant a lot to me. And you totally got it as far as what I was trying to capture. So I was looking forward to coming on here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I know you're on a bit of a book tour of sorts. So where all are you heading to promote your recent release?
Yeah, so like that, kind of the idea behind all this was like, let's see if we can do an event in each community that's really featured in the book, right? I think most people know, obviously, Gilmer's in the subtitle. So like that needs to happen. But what we also wanted to do was like, it's kind of a grand story. Like you're tracing a group as they kind of progress through the coaching profession from, the apprentice to a master staff to going out on your own and trying something and then to refining it. And one of your mentees takes it to a new level. And then obviously is taking it to a whole nother level with you guys. So, during the kind of the apprenticeship phase, if you will, of the book, as you know, Jared, was Marshall. And so we wanted to have an event there. And this takes place in kind of that late 80s era. And you just forget how that was an important time period too. Buzz Bissinger wrote the famous book, Friday Night Lights. Well, I forget which week it takes place, but Permian flies out to Marshall, and they lose to him 13-12. And then, later on in that year, Marshall loses to Dallas Carter. And then, Jesse Armstead catches the pass in the end zone. And then they go on and it ended up, remember Dallas Carter had their state title taken away. Converse Judson wins it. And Marshall is like I think it's the only team that's gone undefeated technically by that and didn't win a state championship. And then 2 years later, they were able to do that. So there's a lot of pride still, from that being a time and an era when a school and a community in East Texas was the tops of the state. So we wanted to have an event there. So we've had one event in Marshall. We also kind of part two where Jeff, when he enters the picture, he's the young, coach on Danny Longstaff in Jacksonville in the 90s. And they have the McCowan brothers at quarterback, Randy, Josh, then Luke, just a great era of football and a proud community a community that was very proud of that era. And so we wanted to have an event there. And then obviously in Gilmer, they took it to a new level. So we did it at the first event we had was kind of a private party where we had everybody. We tried to get a good group of, those veteran East Texas coaches all together in a neutral spot. And people are territorial, right? And everybody's got an ego. So that was so unique where we pulled it off, where a good group from a variety of spots came to celebrate, a story that really promotes the area. So that was cool. That was in Longview. The second event was in Gilmer, and Jeff came in for it. And we had it in this restaurant called Duds on the Lake. And literally, it was like a dive bar. It was awesome. You're talking about that small community, and Jeff's there. And y'all probably spent more time with him in settings like that before. But my relationship with him, I was always together with him in, a field house, that type of setting, or a couple times I got to be in his house and we were kicking it or whatever. But to see Jeff Traylor in a local spot in Gilmer, Texas is a sight. You're talking about people that are getting emotional. You're talking really good age diversity in the room. I'm talking from, young kids that they remember their uncle played with him or something like that, to the elderly people in the community that have lived their entire lives that are crying of this was someone they viewed as their son, and they're so proud of him. And he came in town, and obviously they want their book signed by him. So we did that. That was awesome. The second event we did was in Jacksonville to pay homage to that, and to have Jeff be there with kind of three mentees in his life, Danny Long, Wayne Coleman, Matt Turner, and to see, it's almost like you get into a certain context and those roles come back into place, and Jeff's that young guy again, and Danny Long's, doing some funny jokes and ripping him here and there, and the reverence that he has for Wayne and Matt. And then also the McCowan family showed up, and to see Josh and Randy. And that's Texas high school royalty in a sense. And they had it at the Tomato Bowl, which I've lived in East Texas. I've always driven by. I've never seen a game there. That place is like Fenway Park. That is like a site. They've done a great job about preserving the architecture on the outside, but in the inside, they've passed a bond and renovated. That's the press box, the video jumbotron. It's all state of the art. So they were eager to show it off and are super proud. And they pay homage to former players that have been in the NFL, and Bum Phillips having coached there. They do a great job of selling their story. So that one was sweet. And then the one that we had just this past Monday was in Marshall, and we had it at the Y.A. Tittle Fieldhouse, right? And there's still like that grand. It's been a while since Marshall's been on top like that, but there's still like those echoes there of being, late 80s Pride, big 5A Texas. I mean, that's a lot. That's a proud group. And Danny Long brought Dennis Parker in. And again, Parker, I mean, Jeff's done it. You forget Dennis Parker was one of the first ones that went straight from high school to college. Mm-hmm. He left Marshall as soon as he won the state title, and then he was North Texas head coach. So this dude's got some juice to him, obviously, and that whole staff pretty much came in. Sid Harper, Bill Harper, Tom Thrower, people I've heard about. But you see Dennis Parker walk in, and they did a great job of decorating the field house, and Danny Long is walking him up to the front table. And you're kind of like, hey, is he okay? I'm just trying to be sensitive to, he's up in his years. And Danny just kind of like winks and looks at me. He was like, relax. He goes, Dennis is special. Just watch, And like as soon as Dennis, they come to a time when like, hey, Coach Parker, would you be willing to say something? And he kind of straggles up. And then he like takes his hat off and just goes right into storyteller. And like he had the crowd from, people crying, laughing, and to then recapturing everybody of like how he always viewed his programs. And really it just echoes of what the heart of the book is and what the heart of Jeff is and all of them. So it was special that these moments could happen. The last one we're doing, because the final chapter, if you will, the book is with you guys now. Like it's in San Antonio, so we have to do something there. And Texas High School Coaches Convention's being held there this year, so you got. I mean, it's the second year in a row where you're the official host. You forget that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And Jeff plays that host card so well. And he's so good with so many people because he actually knows their backstories and knows the stories of the communities. And anyways, we wanted to have something, and it kind of ties back. Jared, you know how it starts, where like when you're kind of looping that history lesson. Dennis Parker comes to Marshall, and then we start to tell the story of East Texas. But he comes after he and D.W. Rutledge were coordinators at Converse Judson under Frank Arnold. Mm-hmm. And, so that was kind of like, I guess, the first, those were the original methods that have been duplicated since then. And then now to have it full circle where Jeff is the head coach at the University of Texas in San Antonio, and what Converse Judson's X amount of miles away from that Alamo Dome. So Coach Rutledge is coming, and he's going to kind of serve as like a joint host, if you will, him and Jeff together. And I think Coach Rutledge even told me that he's going to go grab Frank Arnold and bring him to be there just to see and get a sense of, you probably wonder later on about your legacy and things outliving you. And so I think that's going to be super special. It's the last day where coaches convention's over. So it doesn't it doesn't conflict with anything. And it's its own thing where it ought to be the perfect ending, if you will, of getting to do these. So.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of the book is seeing kind of that full circle journey, not so much with Jeff himself having coached at San Antonio, but the methodologies, right? The approach to molding young men. Like that was so fascinating to me. That was super cool. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the book.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you bring up the part of the Friday Night Lights correlation with everything in Marshall, right? Because whenever you're reading the book, I mean, God, you do a great job of illustrating that 80s small town Texas football era. Like when you're watching the Friday Night Lights movie, you see those scenes when you're reading your book, of course, with forest instead of desert, because you're in East Texas. But I mean, it's incredible. And how that whole coaching tree kind of formed over there in East Texas from Converse. It's unbelievable to map out.
Oh, and you totally would have gotten this part of, like the way people host each event. It's their own unique, it's their own form of hospitality. So you see the mannerisms. Right. Marshall, like those guys walking in and how they talk to you and stuff. Excuse my language, but it's like there's a bunch of badasses walking in. They might be in their 70s, but like that swagger doesn't leave you. Yeah. Right. So like, I mean, you get around Dennis Parker and you're like, I can totally see how you were the biggest personality in the room, in every room you walked into. And then at the same time, I bet there were some people that were scared to death of you, like that kind of feel. But it was like that. That was a big era, right? Like that's when, you saw, especially that book was huge on portraying the state in a way where like that Texas pride, grand, confident, that's there still.
Still there. Yeah. Today. And you grew up in East Texas. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up in East Texas and the era that you did and maybe some of your memories being around sports at that time and how frenzied these communities are?
Absolutely. Like what's funny because it's so much more transient and fraternal now. So like, I mean, I can remember, and I love it because these coaches add into it of like, East Texas is just a bunch of small communities, basically. Like we don't have a major city. I mean, you got Longview, Tyler that are like the small twin sisters, if you will, but like twin sister cities. But it's like, I mean, it's a bunch of small communities. So I grew up in White Oak. My father was a coach there. He was one of the football coaches. He was the defensive coordinator for a long time. The head coach that he worked for is Andy Griffin. And Andy's actually getting inducted into the THSCA Hall of Honor this weekend. So that'll be cool too. My pops will be down. Awesome. And so, I mean, it was like you grow up and there's just certain rhythms that you always remember about the season. And like even certain rhythms on a Friday, like you remember, like I remember being given like I don't know if it was a quarter or 50 cents. And I'm not that old. I'm not trying to make like, hey, in my day, but I remember like being given like a little bit of change and the school would sell these ribbons, like, and they were long. I mean, like from your, like almost like your shoulder blade down to your torso. And like each ribbon had a different theme of the week. So like when White Oak played Spring Hill, it'd be, kill the hill. And there'd be some sort of message and design on it. And every kid would buy that. Then you'd wear it in like during the school day and there'd be something tailored toward building up to the Friday pep rally. And then all of the campuses went and attended the pep rally. And so whether it was elementary, middle, or high school, like you're all there. And then, the head coach comes out, there's a skit, there's the cheerleaders, the band walks in, and then the head coach walks out and then introduces the captains, right? And these are the guys that got the most swag ever. They're walking through with, boots and jeans and a jersey and, and the, girls are swooning and all the guys wish they were them. And they have that. And then as soon as that's over, it's like, I remember walking down, then I'd go over to the field house and there'd be some sort of maybe pregame dinner or something like that early in that way the guys were fed. But then like, you just see the pageantry, you see how many people are involved in setting up the stadium and the banners and all that stuff. And then, sure enough, it's time to hit the field and the refs are in and there's small talking and you're seeing the players out there. And then you start to see people start to pour into the stadium, right? And like, it's like the meeting ground. Like this is the event for the town once a week for 10 weeks a year that you're guaranteed. So it was, everybody was going to be there. And then it was the biggest deal. And then afterwards, I remember leaving and it's all you could talk about. You're driving to another member of the coach's house that was going to host the coaching staff party for the night. And we're eating dinner and we're turning on the TV to watch David Smoke tell, the recap of all the local scores, and you're seeing if your team got mentioned and how the other rivals did. So it was like all that stuff over the course of a long period of time. It's like, it makes you, now that I don't live there and my family doesn't live there, like it's like the book writing experience was like a way to capture how you make sense of your childhood. And everybody has a unique childhood. And I'm not saying mine was better or worse than anybody's, but it's like, it helped me make sense of the things that I liked, the things that I liked that I can remember about how I saw my father or how I saw my mother, or how like I remember older guys on the team would talk to me, or what I would talk about with my classmates, like all that stuff. So it's like those little small town rhythms that are kind of like, you can almost like make fun of them in a sense, maybe like but there are things that rally people together, and they're like, they almost become sacred rituals of like, how people do life together. And so they're really special. And I think that's something that has been pretty well preserved. I don't know the full length, but I do think those things are still pretty well preserved in East Texas. That's an aspect I think makes that area really, really special.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's why the book resonated with me so much, is that as I was reading it, even though I grew up in a very different community, several hundred miles away, still a small town, South Texas. Totally. I mean, all of the things that happened in the book, I could relate to. Probably not the success of the teams going to state and win state.
Me neither. But
the cultural part of it, absolutely, right? And you hear people say football's a religion in Texas, but I mean, when we talk about those shared experiences that we have growing up in different communities, but having that same community attachment, right, and all of that stuff, like really ties through. And I think it's really beautiful in the way that it can tie us together just here within the state of Texas. So that's awesome. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the writing process, and that's kind of what I wanted to dive into. Like, where did your first inspiration for this book come, and what was that process like for you, like deciding to write this story and share this with the world?
Absolutely. So I think it was a gift that it took so long, because I had to figure out different paths on how I thought the story would be one where a lot of people saw themselves in it, right? Or a lot like what you just said, like. I didn't grow up in Gilmer. Well, neither did I. But like, we see things about that story that make me think, well, that's how it was in my. I mean, I identify those people, right? I know they just had a different name, but
there are even players and characters in the book that I'm like, oh, like that was Lonnie in my hometown. Totally. You know what I mean? Like same guy, just different name, different town.
Totally. The only character I wish I would have done a better job on bringing to life was like identifying sooner and then bringing to life like that Buddy Garrity figure, right? In front of the lights that every town has, the big booster that's just because that is like one of the greatest characters, right? Because every town has that person. But anyway, it started off, it was, I was writing my dissertation at Baylor, and I was still working. I used to be a basketball coach. I was on Coach Scott Drew's staff. And for my dissertation, which is the last thing I had to do to get a doctorate, I wanted to do it over coaching because I still thought I'd be coaching for a while. And when I went, compliance had an issue with it being anything basketball related from the subject area. So like I couldn't do it over high school coaches because they thought that might be flagged for illegal recruiting or something like that. And then from a college coaching standpoint, I was like, nobody's going to share anything real because they're going to view it as like a competitor trying to gain an edge. Sure. So, growing up around, especially my father's, his lifestyle, and my dad just loves the profession and the association and everything. I was just like, I'd be really cool. I have great respect for how good high school football is in the state of Texas. Like, let's look at some of these, let's identify a small group, and let's do a bunch of case studies, and let's see how, if you can understand like the organizational methods and the leadership stuff that like Jeff is essentially was like a CEO of a town. Mm-hmm. And so like, you can totally misjudge it based on context and be like, well, this is a small, what is this, a 4A school, a 3A school or something like that. And you're like, how big really is it? And then you like actually go into it and you're like, he's got the booster club, the school board, the superintendent, the administration, the teachers, the parents, all different aspects of the community. He's got them completely in line and where they feel a part of it. And he's found a role for each of them. I was like, this guy's a CEO. Like, this is something, if you took him just in a more cosmopolitan area, in a more structured, whatever you want to call it, like a business structure, he'd kill it. It's like, and I think there are other people that do that the same way in their own context. So I was like, let's see if we can like study and see if they'll reveal enough where you can kind of get a gist on how they pulled this off. And we had a great group of 6. We had, it was Jeff, it was Scott Surratt, who is, as you know, is both of y'all know he's going to be one of those soon. And that was he's a great friendly rival, right, of Jeff's. Just, they sharpened each other, and he oversees Carthage. And then there was Gary Joseph at Katy. Katy's that's a monster. Todd Dodge, and we tied him specifically to the South Lake Carroll regime, just on what he did specifically there. Chad Morris, specifically when he was with Lake Travis, what he did. And then the last one was Tom Westerberg when he was at Allen, what they specifically did. And it was super insightful, but I thought Jeff's, and this is the beauty of Jeff, not that the other guys wouldn't have eventually got there, but maybe he just felt more comfortable faster. Jeff was comfortable revealing how many other coaches were involved on shaping this and how talented his staff was. And he was like, part of the beauty is we kept the band together. Like, it's so hard to keep the band together when you have that much talent together because people have different goals, right? That's a good thing. But that's a gift he has where I just became super fascinated with who is Matt Turner? Who is Alan Metzel? Well, who is Todd Barr? Who are these guys? And so when I switched and became full-time faculty at Ole Miss, like one of the things I knew I needed to start doing was, start to get publishing stuff lined up. I need to produce and all that stuff. And so I was like, I'd love to tackle a deep dive on one of these. And I want to do what Jeff's doing or what he done. And I was like, I just asked permission. I was like, hey, if you trust me enough, I'd love to really do a thorough and have it be something in story form, not just in research methods that people would read. And that, whether you got a lot from this as another coach, or you got a lot from this as another fan or a community leader or whatever. I thought there was enough for everybody, how to live. And so he trusted me. And the great thing, it's funny because they're like a mafia. I mean, I'm sure UTSA is the same way, but that Gilmer tribe, that's a mafia where if Jeff didn't give the okay and say, hey, yes, you can answer thoroughly on when he talks to you and all that stuff. And yes, be comfortable. Trust me, he's a good guy, all that stuff. Like, we would not have had that. I would not have had that access. And so once he did that, and you build trust over time, you got it going. And it was like one of those deals of like, you kept going down the rabbit hole. So you thought it was going to be this, and then it went a whole nother way too. And you're like, this is so freaky. Like, this is so cool. Like, I did not know that, there were that many, prominent people that came through in Jacksonville. I had no idea Danny Long was Dennis Parker's O-line coach. And, Dennis treated him the same way Danny treated Kurt and all this stuff. I was like, this is too cool. And then, so like, you're starting to do that stuff, but still it was like, you need one season. Otherwise it's just a big history lesson, right? It's like, it's kind of hard. I got to get captured by one story. And the more I kept talking to people, the more people referenced that 2014 season and how meaningful that was from a variety of ways. And you learn about, when I thought it was really cool because there's a lot of different topics that they kind of cover. And it's a great case study for this. And I know San Antonio is the same way of like how people handle grief is a really cool thing to understand collectively. So they had a player pass away tragically before that season started, as you know. And then how do people walk through that together? And I think that's like the best version of small towns right there is people are like, they feel that pain, they grieve too, and they can't wait to do it with you. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a really special thing. And I love that aspect. I love, I think people are more accepting of this now because we move around more. But like when Blake Lynch transferred in, I remember Jeff and them got chopped up.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I was young, I remember hearing about that. It was a huge deal. Yeah.
It was a huge deal. And it's like people don't even understand what actually happened. Did the coach actually sign off on it? All that stuff. You can hear, depending on who you heard from, you're like, well, he's a cheater. Or something like that. So it was really cool. Again, I love this about Jeff, that he's pretty transparent about, like, learn about the whole thing. I'll tell you what happened on my, how I saw it and everything. And then you're like, this is a mentally tough crew too, to be able to walk through something and know that they were in the right, but have to endure shots and all that stuff. And then you learn more of, just there are different aspects of that. And obviously, like, it's the last season too that they were together. So it was like that last year, they're all together. And so I thought that was like a cool way to let's try and storytell that last year where the band's together, if you will. Yeah. And they go through all these different hot button issues. And ultimately it's a great feel good story. And then try and like slice it back and forth, like zigzag back and forth with the history, how it came together. And I thought that was a cool way to do it. It took me a really long time to have that come to me, where it was like, yeah, that'd be a really cool way of telling the story. And I needed a great editor in Abigail Mizell, who's not a football person at all. It is, a rhetoric professor from New England, and she fell in love with the story, and she totally got it and like helped with shaping some things. And I needed her. So it just took a long time to get it to where it was like, this is the way we want to tell the story.
I think the way that's told is really well. The zigzagging, as you refer to it, going from that 2014 season to all of the history and just kind of there and then backwards and then back to it and then a little bit backwards again in the time machine. It's really, really cool. So you talk about, trying to figure out which coach you wanted to hone in on and then how to really try to wrap it around sort of a central theme, right?
Yeah.
I want to know what central theme or what main commonality did you find with all of your research amongst all of these great coaches, Danny Long, Wayne Coleman, Matt Turner, Jeff Traylor, Dennis Park. What do you think is one characteristic that these guys all have?
It's tough to do one. I would say two things always stuck out was like their loyalty to their crews. I just think that's a rare thing nowadays. I just don't think we stay together that long anymore. And I think it's just more in all careers. I just think we probably move on and it's more of, and I've probably been guilty of this myself, of just, you're looking for the next opportunity to further your career. And you don't realize until later of like, the greatest time or the time where it was the most beautifully done was when the band was together, And so I think I love that aspect and the way they spoke about each other over and over and over, where I just don't think that's an act. I think that was genuine. And Dennis Parker even brought that up at the book event he spoke about the guys. I mean, these are people in their late 70s and they're still talking about each other that way. And they're still involved in each other's lives. Like, that's a wonderful picture. It's not fake then. This wasn't a temporary deal of like, we got to work together because we share an office. It was like, no, you grew to actually love each other. And then, man, I think one of the cool things is like, they've got this irrational confidence. I don't know if it's irrational confidence or just this gift where they just see things in places other people don't. So like Marshall, and I feel like maybe as a native East Texan, I could say this, is like, I don't think Marshall was as much of a desirable place to live, right? Or like, I don't think it is if you understand it. If you don't, I could see people being like, why would you move there? Jacksonville, I could see people saying, why would you move there? Why don't you live in this place instead? Gilmer, Jeff, why would you take that job? You know what I mean? But they see the best version of people and the best version of institutions. And then once you see a place how they see it, you're like, this is the coolest place ever. Like, this is wonderful. And I think maybe they were just ahead of the game in regards to that stuff. And, I think there's a good, and I think all three of those places, I mean, especially doing the events, you see how those places are special. Like, those places don't exist just everywhere. Like, that's a community backed place. But I also think a really good aspect of the story is with you guys, right? And I wouldn't want to give the specifics, but it's like, Texas Tech throws money at you and you don't see it the same way you see this place. Like, that's the beauty of it is you see something that somebody else doesn't. And then before long, everybody else is going to see it like you do. Wow. And then the thing explodes.
You
right?
beat me to the point I was going to make, man. I was teeing it up. I was coming in. But I mean, totally, I'm sure a lot of Jeff's coaching buddies thought he was crazy to take the UTSA job. You know, it's at the time, what, a 10-year-old program, not the sexiest brand of college football by any means, definitely not the biggest payday he could have gotten. But he saw things that the people didn't, had completely unexpected success here. So it's an excellent point. Excellent point.
And everyone that is around the institution, around that university, just how you say, everyone that is in those small towns, they're able to see it. They know that it exists. They know that potential is there, right? Just waiting, right? And I got goosebumps all over, buddy. That's incredible.
I'll tell you what, I think it actually might be a competitive advantage too sometimes, where like, hey, all of us see it this way, see it a certain way, but others don't. So they almost like leave you alone to make it beautiful. Mm-hmm. Where it's almost like where some places, you know, they're too many people think they should look a certain way, so their hands are in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
They don't leave you alone.
Right.
I think that's something unique where like Marshall, they left them alone. Jacksonville, they left them alone and trusted them. Gilmer, they left them alone and trusted them. It seems like UTSA let Jeff roll. Okay. Trust what he's doing and his staff. And I mean, I would think that's a spot. They're getting different players in there now.
Yeah, it's important. It's important to keep it from getting contaminated, right? And that can happen. You see it all the time at these larger institutions.
Totally.
Yeah, I know we're coming up on time. I got one last fun question to ask you. So yes. I know you spent a lot of time researching this book, spent a lot of years writing it, a lot of stories that probably got cut on the editing floor.
Totally.
What's a story that pulled at your heartstrings the most to have to not include it in the final copy?
Man, there's one story. It's not a heartstrings. It's more of just like, this is pretty cool to see how competitive these people are. And it was Kerry Lane told me this story where he was like, it was a 9th grade game or a 9th grade B team game or something like that. I'm blanking on it. So Gilmer, you know, Jeff was great always about being ambitious with his lower teams, which you tell on yourself on that kind of stuff, like on how you view a full program. By like taking care of your 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, you know, all that kind of stuff. And he was really good about that. And he took, I guess there was a spot open on a Thursday night where they could get an extra game. And he wanted them, and he had talked with John King. Have y'all ever talked with John King before or learned or listened to him? John King is the head football coach at Longview. Okay. And so he's the same. I mean, he's the president of THSCA this year. He's a big figure, right? And they won it. His son is Haynes and is now the A&M quarterback. And they won 6A, I think, in 2018. And just another one of these great, big figures. You could easily, want to learn more about what John's doing. But these are competitive people. And John's out there on the sideline because I think the game was played at Lobo. And so some of his coaches are out there, and it's like their 9th grade B team. And Gilmer, it had to be Gilmer's regular 9th grade. And so since they were lower classification, but they had taken them over. And sure enough, I think the game ends up, being tied at the very end. This is a 9th grade game on a Thursday night. You got more important stuff to do the next day. And he says, all of a sudden it goes into, they do like a sudden death, like type of, where each team gets a score. And he said, so sure enough, you got the designated 9th grade head coach who's like a young coach on their staff, Trent like shaking and scared to, about making the right call because Jeff is now over right behind him. And John King's doing the exact same thing over behind his 9th grade B team coach. And you're talking about these guys that are like, they're like, hey, where's this? What formation are we in? We don't have him in. We deserve to lose. And he's like, you're watching, these young assistants just be like, oh my God. The head coach is right there. But it was like a great picture of, I'm not even giving the story justice because Kerry he nailed it, where it was like, you're seeing people that are hyper competitive. It was a 9th grade game on a Thursday night, and they got it last minute just to get some more reps. And the head coach is You know, these two guys on a Thursday night are like going at each other. And I thought that was just a cool picture to see of how competitive Jeff is too.
So that's awesome. That would fit in well in the movie adaptation if there's plans for that.
Yeah.
No question.
I'll contribute to the GoFundMe.
Okay.
All right, well, cool. We'll let you out of here. I know you got to get back on the road. You got people to see. You got books to sign, all that good stuff. Speaking of which, I do want to remind everyone listening to this to be sure to go out to the Well. What's it, Tuesday, July 19th, I believe? Yep. Book signing event. Coach Traylor will be out there. Coach Rutledge will be out there. They're good to meet you, Dr. Taylor.
Absolutely.
Buy the book. Where else can people purchase the book if they won't be able to make it to the signing event in San Antonio?
Absolutely. If you go to our website, it's just my website's huntertaylor.design. We've got links all there. So obviously it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target. And then one of the easiest ways, because I keep having people ask this, is just directly through my publisher. And I've got a link, like my website's linked to that directly. If you click order a book, I mean, it's a lot. I've heard it's faster. They get it to you a lot faster. So if that's important to you, but if you're a faithful Amazon customer, I mean, it's you can just put it in your bundle. And
hey, on Amazon, it's out of stock. On Amazon, it's out of stock. It's out of stock, buddy. You got to get the Kindle version if you go on Amazon because they got no paperbacks left for you.
Wow.
We'll go to the website, click order a copy. It'll go to the publisher. They're not running out. So
awesome news. Congratulations on the book, Dr. Taylor. It is phenomenal.
Thanks a bunch. Hey, I hope I get to meet y'all Tuesday too. If I know you got a lot of stuff going, but would love to meet y'all.
Yeah, I think our paths will cross at some point, whether it's Tuesday or in the future, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Hope the rest of your trip goes well and you get to meet maybe our subscribers of ours on Tuesday. So
awesome.
We'll do what we can to get the people out there.
Thank you so much, Jeff.